liberalism has its own creation story. It's the Big Bang. Now, don't ever let anybody tell you that the debate is between creation and evolution. That doesn't make any sense. Those two things are not opposites. Why? Because creation has to do with where things came from in the beginning. And evolution is just talking about how a single-celled organism slowly changed into a more complex organism. That's what evolution is, right? So even if you believe in evolution, that doesn't explain where the first animal came from. Does everybody understand that? So they can show their chart all day long that shows an ape slowly turning into a human being, but that does not tell you where the first life came from, the first animal came from. So they're like, oh, well, where'd we come? Evolution. Evolution explains nothing. Because the hardest part to explain is not how an ape supposedly turned into a human. The hardest part to explain is how nothing turned into a single-celled organism. Because single-celled organisms are extremely complicated. Remember learning about them in school, the paramecium and the amoeba? Remember learning about the mitochondria and learning about all the different parts of a cell? And remember learning about the DNA? Even when you're just learning the basics, it's super complex. Let alone if you go deeper into studies of microbiology. You'd have to be a fool to say that there's no God after an in-depth study of microbiology. Where did that first organism come from? It'd be like if there was just a green circuit board. You know those little green computer boards that everything is put on? It'd be like if you had a green circuit board and it was raining out of the sky solder. Liquid soldering, right? And resistors were floating around, and diodes are floating around. Capacitors are floating around, right? And just give it a few million years, and what? You're going to have a computer that's up and running. But that's more believable. That's more believable than to think that there was just an explosion, there's just gases and rocks and elements, and that all of a sudden something came to life. And you know what? Once that something came to life, it had to reproduce. And it had to reproduce something that can survive and eat. It had to have something to eat. What's it going to eat? Well, think about, what do we eat? We can either eat plants or we can eat animals, right? I eat both. I'm not against eating plants. I eat both. But here's the thing. We can either eat plants or animals. What do these two things have in common? Plants and animals. They're living things, right? So what do you eat when you're the first life form? And if you're lucky enough to where there's two of you, you eat the other one. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing else to eat. Right? I mean, what do you know? It's like, okay, there's two of us. We could either reproduce or I can eat you. Or maybe we'll do both. I mean, it's like, you know, what do you do? It's stupid. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense to just think that just out of nowhere, just these bacteria are just going to be invented and they just start growing and multiplying. What are they eating? Who knows? What are they eating? Rocks? Dirt? Air? They can't eat plants. There aren't any. They can't eat animals. There aren't any. It's nonsense. And no one will ever explain it to you. Never. You could go to that ASU science department and sit there for 20 years and take every class taught by every instructor. They will never demonstrate to you, okay, here's how the first life form came into existence. Let me break it down. Here's how it survived. Here's how it reproduced. They're just like, well, it's just one of the mysteries of our religion. It's a mystery of their religion. It's just something they believe in. It's a fable. It's a myth. It's a fairy tale. It's been proven that it can't happen. Life produces life, and nothing can come to life on its own. You can even give people a dead body and say, bring it to life. They're already starting with the whole body. They can't bring it to life. But we're supposed to believe that the body was created and it was brought to life. And people are so foolish today in America, they think that life can be created in a laboratory. They actually think that. They've watched a lot of science fiction and movies, and they think that they can actually bring things to life in the laboratory. It can't happen. Well, cloning. Cloning is where they take something that's already alive, They remove the DNA and put in a different DNA to make a clone. They don't bring anything to life. They can never bring anything to life. You could give a scientist a laboratory, Bunsen burners, heaters, coolers, beakers, test tubes, and give him every element on the periodic table to work with and tell him, make an organism, make the simplest organism. And that's even with a designer. And he can't even do it. Give him all the computers he wants, give him a smartphone, and tell him, make something that's alive, however basic, however simple. Let it reproduce. Could never happen, never. But we're supposed to believe it happened by itself. That all the elements happen to be there with no designer, and it happened. They can't even do it with a designer. They can't even do it with a computer. They can't do it with anything, because only God can do it. And only God has ever been able to bring things to life, and only God will ever be able to bring things to life. And just to make it clear, I don't believe in evolution at all. Evolution's a big fraud, but evolution's not even the debate. See, evolution is like a smokescreen to get you to focus on that instead of focusing on the real big question is where we came from. Because you know what's a lot more foolish than evolution is the Big Bang. The Big Bang theory is so bizarre and foolish, they don't want to talk about that. So they want to focus on fossils. Show us a fossil of the first organism, how it came to life, or how about getting halfway there? It's all nonsense. It's part of their religion. So we got their